Good afternoon and welcome to the third installment of our 5-part Women of Influence virtual event series. My name is Alicia Scallon. I'm the co-CEO and head of events at Women of Influence, and I want to thank you all for choosing to spend your time with us this afternoon. By this point in the year, we would already have gathered together several times, and while we've really missed seeing everyone in person, we are so grateful to be connecting through this series today. Typically, we would start our events with a land acknowledgement for the city we are gathering in, and we would be remiss not to include this very important element. Today, we have over 400 people joining us from across the country, so we're asking everyone to take a moment to acknowledge that the land they are on, wherever that may be, is the traditional territory of many nations and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I'd like to thank our presenting partners for producing this very important programming with us. BDC, the only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs, and Cisco Designed for Small Business is here to help female entrepreneurs survive and recover through secure remote work technology. We posted links to both BDC and Cisco Designed resources in the chat box on the side and encourage you to see how they can help you. I'm also excited to share that we have updated our What Now hub on womenofinfluence.com to include new mental health resources, including webinars and special program offers for our community. So head on over there when we're done today to check out all of our new offerings. Just before I introduce our guest this afternoon, a few housekeeping items to ensure your best possible viewing experience. We do recommend you switch your screen to grid view, which you can do at the top right-hand side. The second half of the event will include a live audience Q&A, so please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand column of your screen throughout the conversation, and our MC will get to as many of them as time permits at the end of our hour. Finally, if you have any technical questions, type them into the chat function speech bubble on the right-hand side of your screen, and our tech support will assist you. Without further ado, please allow me to now welcome our MC today, Marcia McMillan from CTV News, along with our third guest of the series, Joanna Griffiths, founder and CEO of Knix. Over to you, ladies.
Hi, Alicia. Hi, Joanna. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. And Alicia, I appreciate the warm introduction, and I welcome everyone to the What Now series. I am so excited, Joanna, to sit down and be able to talk with you again. You and I have spoken a few times, and you have such an incredible story that I think deserves to be shared over and over again. And now you're entering a new chapter, which we're going to get into today. First of all, I want to start by asking how you're doing. How are you and your family doing in these super strange times that we're living in?
Well, thanks so much for having me today, and thanks to Women of Influence and to BDC and Cisco for making this possible. It's great to see you again and to be reconnecting. And I think about the last time that we spent an hour together, which was March of last year, and I was, I think, 36 weeks pregnant or 37 weeks pregnant, and living at my parents' house, just living the dream. So I would say that I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. I'm feeling really grateful to be with my family, and that my family's healthy, and to be supported by a really great team, and to just have a place that's my own home, because it would have been a different situation about a year ago. So I'm feeling really good.
And I think if we knew a year ago, or if we were told a year ago what we would be living in now, none of us would have believed it. Now, one of the things about you is that you always see an opportunity in disruption. Let's start at the beginning. For people who don't know your story, they may have seen your stores, they may have seen your products in Nordstrom or your commercial lately. Let's go back to the very beginning and just remind everyone about your entrepreneurial journey and how it all began.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, I always like to start with this one message, which really is make something that people need. And that's truly the way that we started at Knix. So I learned that, through a chat and all of the different changes that women's bodies go through in different life stages and phases, I learned that 1 in 3 women can leak, and 80% of women leak during their period. And so Knix really started with an idea to kind of disrupt the intimate apparel category. There was nothing like the product, which was leak-proof underwear. That was the first product that we came to market with about 8 years ago now. on the market. And I just remember thinking about my own life and thinking about probably this exact moment that I'm in now, being a new mom and having to make a pit stop at the drugstore and buy Depends because that was the only product that was on the market. And so it really started with this huge, hairy consumer product that was driven by human need. And I think you're right. Like, I think that we've all been challenged to rethink the way that we live and we operate right now. And there are so many new needs that are coming to the forefront. And so I think it's a great opportunity for disruption, to your point.
Right. And so if we fast forward a little bit, in 2018, you won the Startup Award with the RBC Entrepreneur Awards Gala. You have grown from 8 million to 30 million in revenue. Tell us how you managed to grow your business in an area, as you point out, that was pretty new territory, and you had to convince people that this was a product that women needed. How did you do it?
That's a great question. I think I made a lot of mistakes along the way, so there's absolutely no way that I got it perfect. But I think one thing that's always been true to Knix is that as a company, when it comes to our products or when it comes to our marketing, we're always listening to our customers and really getting a keen sense of how they want to be spoken to, how they want to be marketed to, how they want to be portrayed, and sort of letting that guide us. And so, in the onset, we were really early with things like using our customers in our photo shoots. We've been really at the forefront of a bunch of different campaigns and taboos. So, whether that's the first brand to kind of facilitate conversations around fertility, or it's, most recently with our TV commercial that you mentioned that we launched just a couple weeks ago, the first lingerie ad that exclusively features women over the age of 50. I think that we've always come at it from the viewpoint that myself and my team, like, we're customers ourselves, and how do we want to be spoken to, and how do we want a brand to communicate and relate to us, and then taking that very human approach, which has set us apart from the rest because into the market that was dominated by Victoria's Secret, it really preyed on this notion that women had to be one certain way. We were sexual objects. We were only one size. We didn't deserve to be comfortable. We had to wear these like torture devices, basically. And so I think it's just like so many categories was one of the ones that really needed to be shaken up. And so we just continuously tried new things and took a lot of chances and a lot of risks.
Did you ever worry along the way about being too real, that may put people off?
Always, always. I mean, I think there's been 5 or 6 occasions throughout the course of building Knix where I've been hyper, hyper nervous about whatever it is that we're putting out. And the ironic thing is that every time I've been nervous, it's actually led to one of our biggest breakthroughs or moments. And so the most recent time, yeah, and I can kind of, it's always around a big campaign. It's always around putting ourselves out there, doing something different. I mean, certainly before this, I've been nervous so many times over the past 9 weeks, to be honest, because I think we've taken more chances recently than we have ever before. But I mean, certainly before our International Women's Day video, the over 50 campaign that I was talking about went out, I was terrified. Like, I was like, I think this is really good, and everyone I've shown it to, it's really good. But what if we put this out there and they're like, okay, these guys have lost it, like, you just never know what the response is going to be.
And it's interesting that you haven't learned your own lesson yet, because you keep getting nervous and yet you keep succeeding at your points of most where your anxiety is highest.
I know, but you want to know what? Like, I crave that feeling now, because it's all that it means to me is that we're doing something that I haven't seen before and that hasn't been done before. And so that's why it's nerve-wracking, is you don't know how it's going to be received. But I think that's also why it ends up resulting in some of the best work.
Yeah, I think there's some growth in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the middle of March when the whole world changed, and I'm sure that you had a plan and a vision of how your business was going to go in 2020. When you started to see the world shrinking, what was going through your mind? And let's be real, this happened within a day, it seemed like, and we had really no preparation. So what were your initial thoughts?
I mean, I think just a flurry of emotions, to be honest. So, coming into this, we had a lot of amazing momentum. And I only mention that because I think that people portray businesses as like this straight line. And at the end of 2018, when we won that award, we've grown, like you said, from $8 to $30 million in a single year. It was a lot. But then we started to kind of plateau. And so for 2 years or so, I'd really been working on that next uptick. And we finally had this momentum. And I think that for anyone who's listening, it's important to know that it's never going to be this straight line. And so even if right now you're on a downturn or you're flat or whatever it might be, that's actually quite normal. We all experience those moments. But I was pretty frustrated that this was our first time in a long time on the uptick. But I'd say immediately I just kicked into overdrive. So we had an incident in our office where one person had been kind of connected to one of the early cases in Toronto. And so I remember the evening that the WHO was announcing COVID-19 as a pandemic. I was on the phone with crime scene cleaners, going to give them a plug, to come into our office in hazmat suits and disinfect our entire office. So sort of found myself in this very surreal moment right away.
Wow. So
And
you had a first-hand look at the actual virus affecting your business. It wasn't just out there, it was in your building, in your business.
yeah, or at least concerns that it was, and just being really, really terrified. I mean, it hit home, it made it very real. So we were very early on transitioning to work from home. And then we have retail stores as well, that we've launched recently. And so we ended up being one of the first Canadian brands to close their retail stores.
What was
And
that like?
honestly, it was like a no-brainer decision for us. It was the same day that we'd gone through. I like spent all day trying to find someone to come in and clean our office, and some of our team members who worked at our stores were expressing that they didn't feel safe. And I just had that moment where, and I cried. I absolutely cried. Like I called our people lead, whose name is Joanne, and I was like, if someone got sick and it was working in our store or was coming into our store, I just like would not be able to live with myself. And so we made the decision to close and sort of took this approach in the early days where it's like, we're going to do the right thing. And then we're going to figure out what that means for us after the fact. But for now, we're just going to do the right thing. And then we'll see how things are looking in a couple days. And so that's how we started.
Have you had to lay anyone off? And if so, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so we committed to continuing to pay our retail staff through for until mid-April. So basically until we knew what the government programs were going to look like. And then we, in the interim, started working on this virtual fit program. So we've actually taken this opportunity to kind of accelerate a lot of the projects that were on the back burner, but weren't getting their priority that they deserved, or we just didn't have the bandwidth for. And so, thanks to this virtual fit program, we've actually been able to transition, I'd say, two-thirds of our retail team members to continue to work full time. And then we've had several that opted to not continue working full time. They'd rather kind of go on the employment benefits being provided by the government at this time. But we've come out really solid. So I feel very grateful for that.
How does the virtual fit program work?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that I think a lot of other businesses can do. It sounds very technical, but it really isn't. So we use a calendar booking app, and you can go on and book an appointment with one of our fit specialists. So it's either members of our customer empowerment team or people who have been fit specialists in our stores. And in their homes. We've sent them like our entire Knix assortment, and you book on video, much like we're doing right now, just a chat. We help you with sizing, we show you the collection, and we help you kind of pick the best product for what you're looking for. And so that's something we've been rolling out for the past few weeks, and it's going really well.
With success. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so getting back to re-strategizing your business in those first few days, what about dealing with landlords? What about some of the government grants that have been available? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the way that we thought through things was basically creating like 4 different business scenarios. So like if things go as they would have gone, if things, don't go as well, a worst case scenario, and then an absolute worst case scenario. And for us, our worst case scenario was maybe our supply chain shuts down, we can't get access to product, or 3PL closes, we can no longer ship product. And what does that mean for our business, and how can we conserve cash, and how long can we stay afloat for? And so that was one of the first things that we did. And then we also looked across the board at where we could cut costs, basically everything that wasn't our team. Small examples, but the commercial that you saw on TV, we originally had in the online version a Demi Lovato song as part of it. And it was like super killer, and we were really excited about it. Could not justify that expense when this happened.
Right.
So, all the non-essential things just start to get cut.
It's a bit of a frill at this point.
Everything that's frill starts to get cut, exactly. And then for negotiating with our landlords, I mean, we've continued to pay rent. We are working with our landlords on the rent relief program, but and I've been coaching a lot of other entrepreneurs throughout this process. It's not mandatory, and so what we're seeing, or what's being seen, is that only about 1 in 4 landlords is actually taking advantage of the program, and a lot of people don't qualify as well. So if you don't have a mortgage, then you don't qualify as a landlord. And so in the case of our office building, it's a family building that's been in the family for 60 plus years, and they don't have a mortgage. So they don't qualify on their side for the relief, and then we don't qualify for the relief. So I think there's a lot of challenges out there with some of the programs that are being provided to kind of navigate your way through it. I will say, when it comes to the government subsidies, Knix, like, much to my surprise, we're actually in a really great position. Like, we are doing better than we've ever done as a company. And so we definitely do not qualify for that money, and nor should we get that money, because there's a lot of companies that are struggling that need it more than we do.
Yeah. Oh, that's an important point to be made. Okay. So what about distributing your product? Have you been able to get it out there?
Yeah, we have. So I'd say that, like, we probably felt the effects earlier than most, because manufacturing partner did get shut down basically January, February, and into March. So we have been navigating through stockouts and inventory challenges, but we have an amazing 3PL partner that's based in Vaughan, who has just done such a great job of putting in, like, the right safety procedures and looking after their team members, all the way through to kind of proactively giving raises to all of the people that work in the warehouse. And so no one within our 3PL has gotten sick, and we've been operating at full capacity. And they've been able to help us with a few of the side projects that we've had going on as well. So I'm really grateful for them.
So are all the products made here in Canada?
No, we make everything overseas. Yeah. So there's that is why we were coming into this in kind of a fragile position, but it just so happened that as we were shutting down, where our products were made was opening up. So
yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's fortunate timing. Okay, so you mentioned that Knix was in a position that you didn't have to rely on the government to help you out, but there are a lot of other entrepreneurs right now who aren't in that similar position. What do you say to them? And again, as you point out, it's uncharted territory. It can be confusing, it can be complicated, and of course, there's not unlimited time. to pay your bills, to pay your rent. So what sort of questions and answers are you giving to people right now who aren't in the same position that you are?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's starting by doing that for the four different scenarios. So like looking at your company and saying like, how is this going to look for me if this continues for 4 more weeks, for 8 more weeks, for the rest of the year, and really getting a handle on what your honestly like what your worst case scenario looks like. And for a lot of people, they're already in their worst case scenario. But I think if you're not, then it at least gives you visibility into what that might be and the steps that you would take, and to do that when you have a clearer head. Another thing, and this was so surprising to me, but I got a text message from our lawyers like 5 days into the shutdown, and they said, like, do you have any contracts that you want us to review? One of our large corporations just had us review 1,000 contracts in a single day and look at how many of them they could get out of. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And so I'd say one of the common things that I've seen throughout all of this is that I actually think the small businesses and a lot of the female run companies are a lot more sympathetic to how other people are doing. And so they're not necessarily breaking the contracts the same way or being as aggressive or any of those things. And so, um, when I've been coaching other entrepreneurs, it's really like, look at your cash flow, look at some of the contracts that you have, and like see if you can get out of them, because or pause them, because I guarantee you that even when it comes to your landlord, they would rather have you have the space be leased when things reopen than have you go out of business. And so I think that it's a bit of a time for playing hardball in that regard. Um,
And I want to mention to everyone what you and I were talking about the other day, that you're hearing a lot of guilt. It's almost like survivor's guilt, people who feel bad about monetizing their product, or even more than that, succeeding during this pandemic. Tell
yeah.
us about that and where you think that comes from.
Yeah, so this is something that I know firsthand because I experienced this within the first couple of weeks of the shutdown, where we started to try a whole bunch of new things and things were working, and it looked like our business was actually going to do pretty well. And even like rallying our team to kind of lean into that was a challenge. And the reason is that when the world is kind of falling apart around you, there's almost a sense of guilt that you are doing well, or that you're profiteering in the midst of a pandemic, which I think a lot of people are concerned about. And the truth is that that's not what's happening. Like if you make something that people need right now, they need it. Like as long as you're not, and there's some caveats to this, like if you're buying hand sanitizer and selling it for 10 times the markup or things like that, then yeah, you're being a dick and don't do that. But if you are, if you just so happen to be making things that people need, like our needs are changing, like there's really interesting things happening in categories like backyard toys and arts and crafts and um, baking, like a whole bunch of industries that were pretty stagnant before. And I think that I'm working on this initiative with Melissa Leong and Jessica Mulrooney and Michelle Romanoff, where every week it's called the Female Business Empowerment Project, and every week we do these Zoom calls with 12 founders within an industry. And without fail, there's the I'm in the call where I give everyone a pep talk that like it's okay if you make money, because you put a lot into your company and your business, and you also have a life and a family and team members. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. Like I'm seeing a lot of people do interesting things and then not wanting to charge any money for it. And I think there are so many ways that we can give back as business owners in a society where you can also still be making money on your core business.
Yeah, you can do both. Gosh, do you
You can
think
do
a
both.
guy would feel that way?
I do not think so. I mean, to be honest with you, like when I started feeling this way myself, I called one of our investors and I was like, I think I need a pep talk. And she's like, I'm going to put you in touch with this guy. And it was a guy. And she was like, he's going to give you a pep talk about how, like, don't feel guilty. And I mean, if you think about it, like we also for the first time we have people's attention. Like we're all working from home. We're on our phones more than ever. Like TV and news ratings, as I'm sure you know, like went off the charts, right? And so if you can communicate your message and it's something that people need, this is actually like a really, really incredible time to grow your business.
And that's how I first saw your commercials a couple of weeks ago. And I paid particular attention to them. And I'm wondering if you have noticed a change in tone in the ads that are running right now, and if you think there needs to be a change in tone, given again the circumstances the climate that we're in.
Yeah, that's a really good question because we went back and forth whether or not it was appropriate for us to air our TV commercial because it is so different in tone from everything that you're seeing. And ultimately, we decided to move forward with it because we'd already done it. So what else are you gonna do? We're like, we might as well try it. But I think that we're finally craving a different kind of content. Like I think that we want to start thinking about what life could look like. We want to start being more positive and optimistic. I think that a lot of the commercials that are on the air, while tonally are appropriate, I'm not actually sure if they are appropriate. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. I think like a brand spot from like a car company or a restaurant chain to talk about, thank you, our frontline workers, where they're basically using it to kind of, it's just not enough for me. Do you know what I mean? Like take those dollars and do what we did, like go buy millions of dollars worth of PPE and help protect people. Like I think it's a bit of a stretch. Is that fair?
Hey,
Yeah.
you can say and think whatever you want. You're in the position to be able to do that. And we'll talk more about your PPE project in just a second. The other tone or the other thing that I'm noticing a lot from commercials is looking forward to the post-pandemic world. And there's a lot of messaging out there about when we come back and when things are back to normal. Are there any things that you see through the filter of your business that you would like to stay?
I mean, certainly, like as a company that only makes underwire bras, I definitely am all for this quarantine ban the bra, only be comfortable movement because I've been on that train for a few years myself, and I just want as many people to join me on it as possible. So I'd love to see that continue to stay. As someone who's really busy and who travels 50% of the time to go for meetings and to go do different things, I'd love to see us use this vehicle more to connect remotely more, where it will enable us to spend more time with our family and our friends. Because certainly when I used to get on an airplane for a meeting and now I'm seeing how well it can be done here, I'm wondering if it was really necessary. And so I think that is a trend that will continue. And then I do believe, and I am an optimistic person, but I do believe that as a society, we're going to come out stronger because of this. I think that, this has had our attention and we are demonstrating the capacity to care about one another and to make personal sacrifices for the greater community and to be invested in underrepresented groups like the communities that are at old age homes and things like that. And I think that it's really grounded us again in our values, and I hope that stays. I think we were living in a very like just high consumerism, fast fashion even, and it wasn't making us happy either. And I'm not saying that this is great for our mental health, but I don't think what was going on before necessarily was either.
I'm all for the soft clothing, by the way. And you mentioned that you're an optimist. That has helped you pivot and get through this and adapt to the new world?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's two traits that entrepreneurs have that are really important amidst what's going on right now. And so the first one is resilience. Like, in order to be a founder, you have to be very, very, very resilient and sort of used to things not going your way, like used to failing truly and picking up the pieces and starting over and starting over. And so that is a muscle that I think I've developed over time. And I think it's why when I started off the top by talking about the instinct was just do the right thing and we'll figure out the implications later, it's because I fundamentally believe when you're doing the right thing, the implications are not going to be as grave as you think that they are, and you'll be able to figure your way through it. And then that's the optimist in me as well.
So there's belief there and there's passion, and you have also turned that into, during these busy times, the need to help. And you launched this PPE campaign and it has taken off. How did that come to be? And it became also a bit of a family affair with your brother involved in that. Tell us that story.
Yeah, sure. So my youngest brother, I'm one of four kids, but my youngest brother is a doctor and he works at one of the hospitals in Hamilton. And he reached out to me mid-March, just expressing that he was worried about the levels of PPE at his hospital, and he was concerned that they were going to run out. So he asked if there was anything that Knix could do to help. And I'm quite certain that at first I dismissed him. Like, I was like, no, we don't do that. So no. But then it stuck around in the back of my mind. And so I was like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Let's just ask. And so we asked our partners and our suppliers, and we found out that actually a lot of them had already switched over to making PPE, and we had access to this network that where we could really leverage something that Knix is good at. And so I shouted from the rooftops, and I emailed like anyone who would listen to me, emailed our partners at the BDC who put me in touch with members of like the government, and basically was screaming as loud as I could that we could do this. And what I saw through that was that steps were being taken, but it was not going to be fast enough. Like, it was not going to be solving the need that was going to present itself in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. And so my brother and I started a GoFundMe campaign. We set out to raise $50,000. And I was nervous about this. Like, I was anxious about it because I didn't want to overstep or interfere. And I was wondering if we were like, if it was too late or all those things. But
Did you feel like you were kind of maybe putting your brand on the line too?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah, for sure. It was a risk. It was a risk. It was definitely a risk. But we, ended up really surpassing our goal. And, we set out to raise $50,000. We're at almost $500,000 now that we've raised. And we got through this, an amazing partnership with a foundation called the Robert Kerr Foundation, whose mandate is to support our at-risk communities, so our shelters and drop-ins. And so ended up creating this really extensive network where for every dollar that we raised on our campaign for frontline healthcare workers, it was matched by $1 for the shelters and drop-ins. And, we've been able to buy over 400,000 pieces of PPE and have set up this pretty elaborate distribution network where every week we do shipments. And we've been at this now for 6 or 7 weeks. And there's no real sign of it slowing down or going away. And it's become a core part of our company. And I think it's really helped root us in the fact that we can help. I think it's so easy to feel helpless, and it was like, no, we have a skill and we know how to do something, and it's important right now. And
it's actually getting to people. It's to the people that need it.
Well, that's the thing. So we've started to look at, like, do we continue to do this, or what does this look like? And so we ended up going out to a bunch of the organizations that we shipped to last week, and we've shipped to over 150 institutions. So it's a very democratic process. Anyone can complete the request form. We call every institution weekly. We go based on who needs it the most, and we ship it to them. And so certainly on the homeless shelter, drop-in community housing, long-term care facility side of things, over 90% of the places that we've shipped things to, we are their only source of PPE. We're the only people that have given them things. And without it, they basically would have been completely on their own. And so when I think back to 9 weeks ago, when I was so nervous about, are we overstepping, or is this too much, or what do we do? This has just been such a great lesson that, like, every one of us has the capacity to help, and like, to trust that instinct, and
not assume that someone else is stepping up.
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. I think we always assume that someone else is going to do it, and we can't assume that. Not when the world's being turned upside down and we're all kind of just trying to figure it out. And so, and if you wait for someone to tell you that they need something, it's often too late. That's the other thing too. So, so this is something that I'm, like, so proud of our company for doing. I'm so grateful for the team members that have taken on essentially second jobs to make this happen. And I'm now an expert in masks. So my husband says I'm like a mask dealer. He's like, you're essentially from Breaking Bad, but you're like on the mask side.
And what was it like to work with your brother?
Oh, it was great.
Collaborate with him,
Great. Yeah, it was great. I mean, we have been in contact almost every single day, and it's been really, I mean, I'm so proud of him. He's really stepped up within his hospital, and his hospital is one of the places that we ship to, and it's been a great partnership. And I'm so proud of him too. Like, I've watched him go to work and have to go into isolation because he's operated on people, like, because there's been risk of exposure, and he just wants to make such a difference, and I'm so proud of him.
Clearly that runs in the family. Okay. What are some of the lessons that you have learned in these past 9 weeks or so as an entrepreneur?
I think that what I've learned is that this is such a great opportunity to rethink how you do business. And I'm seeing this across the board. So I've seen it internally within Knix, but then I'm also seeing it within other founders that I'm talking to. So it's almost acting as this catalyst to change the order of things that you were looking at. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that entrepreneurship is based on resilience, and it's based on this idea of being flexible as well, and moving quickly. And so I think that for us, we've really looked at the order in which we were doing things and moved projects forward and canceled things. And I think just that ability to be hyper flexible is really important. And then I would also say that progress over perfection, 100%.
Explain that. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, so let's look at, like, on the PPE side. I think that's a great example. Like, we moved and we figured it out while we were going. And if we waited for everything to be perfect, it would have been too late. We had a virtual warehouse. We had a warehouse sale plan that we moved to virtual. And we figured that out as we went as well. And it wasn't perfect, but it was effective, and we've learned a lot from it. And so I think that just doing something is better than doing nothing. And if you wait for everything to be perfect, then it's never going to happen. So I think that this has been a great learning for us. And then I'd also just say the power of creativity, like just seeing across the Knix company-wide how creative all of our teams have been. So whether that's coming up with ways to do photo shoots when we can't actually be in a studio, or finding ways to do product wear testing and fit testing when we can't physically measure and be together. I think that just amazed by the level of creativity. It's been really awesome.
Do you feel a different connection now with your customer, and do you feel you're getting new customers during this period?
We're getting a lot of new customers. And some of it definitely came down to specifically within Canada, the PPE stuff. And it's very interesting because that's not why we started it. Like I remember doing my first news interview about it, and they were like, "What's the campaign name?" It's like GoFundMe PPE drop leave. Like,
Ooh, that's catchy.
like I don't have a name. What do you mean? What's the name? I know, I get it, because you have like Conquer COVID, and you have like all these really great campaign names, and ours was just like not a good name. But it's really, I think, connected people to us as a company, and so we're seeing a lot of success through word of mouth, and just keeping our customers engaged, and checking in on them, and that kind of thing.
How do you balance all of this with being a new mom, a day job, a night job, making PPE? How do you keep it all together?
That is a great question. I deal with stress very differently than most people do. And
You
so
tell.
when I get stressed or I feel helpless, I go into overdrive. And so that's essentially what I've done here is I've like occupied my mind by turning things up and going to 100, and at a certain point I will need a break, and I'll crash, and I'll really need to reset and recharge. But I think we all deal with stress differently. And so that's personally how I deal with stress. Other people deal with stress by reverting inwards, and so it's just person by person. But I would say that I'm usually on the road 50% of the time, and now I'm at home, and at least I get to see my son, even if it's for like 3 minutes between Zoom calls. That's more than I would have gotten before. So in a weird way, it's been easier to have balance now than the life I was living before.
Even though you're juggling all these different projects. So you're not curling up in a ball and watching Netflix all day.
No.
Do you think that
shower less?
I read somewhere the other day someone had their COVID to-do list and it said shower. That's what it's come
totally,
to. The fact that has to make a list.
Totally. I had every intention to wash my hair for this today, and it didn't happen. So sorry, guys.
Oh gosh. So do you think that that is a key component to being a successful entrepreneur, that you do rise to the occasion and meet the moment instead of, shrinking down and pulling the covers over your head?
Yeah, I think that I think there's a common thread which I've seen amongst most entrepreneurs that I know that have built kind of sizable companies, and um, either you're a sociopath, which is one group, we're not going to go there, or you've just become a little bit fearless. Like you've fallen on your face so many times that it's not going to stop you from trying. You know what I mean? And so I think that I fall into that camp. I think it's like being fearless, taking action, knowing that you can't wait for someone else to control your destiny or to make decisions for you. I think that's why a lot of people go into entrepreneurship in the first place. And so I think that's why you're seeing entrepreneurs step up to the plate. And I know I keep talking about Michelle Romanoff, but that's because we spend so much time together right now. And she and I were on a call on Friday with one of the federal ministers, and she's brought in 5% of the masks that our entire country has brought in. Her and her business partner. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the same thing. So I do think that entrepreneurs have the power and are going to play a really important role, not only in how we're dealing with things today, but also what our future looks like going forward.
Okay, well, that's the perfect segue into my last questions or line of questions for you. What do you think things are going to look like on the other side of this? Because while we say we want to return to normal, there's going to be a new normal. We won't be able to go back to the way that we lived, for good or for bad. What is your strategy moving forward? What's your vision for the post-pandemic world with Knix in it?
I think we're just we know we don't have all the answers right now, and so not to like push things out, but we're sort of taking things day by day, and we're looking at a bunch of different scenarios. You know, I do think from an office standpoint, it's going to be a while before we can work in person again, or at least at Knix, it's not needed. So we're not going to rush it because we don't have to. But we're thinking, you know, I'm thinking about the fall. I'm thinking about our stores, which really relied a lot on human interaction and someone being in a fitting room and measuring them. And I think the world's going to look different for a while. I do. I think, and it's not what people want to hear, but I think we'll wear masks at the grocery stores, and we will be a lot more cautious about where we go. I think it's going to be a long time before we go to large scale events again. And I think until we either have widespread testing or we have a vaccine, it's normal. It's not going to be what we're used to.
I know we've talked about things that you would like to remain in place after the pandemic. Is there one thing that you miss that you can share with us? And it can be something personal. Is there one little freedom or one way that you treat yourself that you can't? What's the one thing you miss from, you know, back in March?
Well, I'm actually like quite low maintenance when it comes to a lot of different things, but I do miss travel. Like I have been all over the world, and travel is a big part of my life, and I have friends that live in a whole bunch of different places, and so I miss that part for sure. So I'm craving the day when that can be part of our lives again.
Yeah, I hear you.
You?
Oh yeah, I miss that. And let's be honest, I miss the hairdresser. Yeah.
Your hair looks great though.
Oh, I cannot tell a lie. It's the light. I'm just fortunate. I'm very fortunate right now.
Great.
And by the way, please say hello to Michelle for me. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I want to turn to some of the questions that our audience is putting out there. So what has it been like for you to try to run your business while working from home? What are some of the positive surprises or the challenges?
Yeah, so I think we've had to adapt the way we work from home along the way. So in the beginning, I think it was very easy to be in like Zoom call overdrive where you're in back to back to back all day long. And so we have kind of learned to put in a few parameters. So I'll give you just like a couple examples, but one is every day from 12 until 1, we have no meeting time so that people can like exercise or eat lunch or spend time with their kids or whatever that might be. Twice a week, we have blocks where it's the same thing, like no meetings. So you sort of have had to learn as a company to introduce boundaries in a place where it's really easy to not have any. And that was probably a learning for me, or a surprise, was like just how draining it can be to be on video calls for 8 hours straight, and how we have to kind of create these boundaries. And then I'd say like the nicest surprise has been just getting to see my son more. Like, I mean, he's 1, so he's in a really interesting age, and he's really changing every week. And so getting to be around for that has been very special.
Great. Okay, here's another question. What are the changes that you're seeing in customer needs and purchasing behavior? How should businesses adapt? This is a really good question, especially at a time when so many people are saying retail is dead.
Yeah. So we are not seeing that retail is dead. And so I guess I'm like happy to be that poster child. What we are seeing is that people are gravitating. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I thought I believed, and then I'll tell you about what we've been seeing more recently. So in the beginning, what we saw was that people were really gravitating towards the items that they needed in that moment. So I'm working from home. I want to be more comfortable. I need loungewear or athleisure wear or yoga pants. So from an apparel standpoint, kind of those things. Or I need something for my backyard so that the kids can go out and play in it, or I need a board game so my kids can stay busy. So a lot of like, I need this in this moment. And so you certainly saw a lot of categories really struggle as a result of this. Like, I think the broader apparel category has struggled. Anything on the luxury side has struggled. Travel, all those different things. And then now what we're starting to see is people are starting to buy things for when things do open up, or almost as like a treat for themselves.
Right.
So we launched swimwear in the middle of this, and our swimwear launch was our best launch that we've ever had. And going into it, I would have thought it would have been our worst. But I think that people are craving a present for themselves, or something that they can give themselves that makes them feel happier, puts a smile on their face. And I'd say I'm seeing the same thing. Like the jewelry industry is an interesting one. Like, I never thought that jewelry would be would be one of the ones to kind of do well in the midst of this. And I have some friends that run jewelry companies, and they're actually seeing the same thing, that people are, I know, right? They're like treating themselves to things so that they feel good. Or you're doing Zoom calls and these are Jenny Bird earrings, but you're wearing yoga pants, and a dress shirt, but you have earrings on. And so I think that we're seeing a shift in trends that way. And I think when it comes to marketing your products, it's rethinking like what within your assortment is relevant for what people need right now. And there are tons of things that people need right now, but it might not be the hero item that was leading your business before, if that makes sense.
It does. You're making me want to shop. Okay. Another question. Who's your inner circle? Who's your key circle of support? Your family, a nanny, a friend? Who's in this?
Yeah. So I have a nanny who's amazing. Her name's Rebecca, and so she's definitely in my inner circle more than ever. I work with my husband, so he and I are very, very close, and he's sort of my ultimate support person. I have a great relationship with my parents and my family. And then I've been fortunate enough to kind of meet along the way a few other female founders that I just feel grateful to have as friends, or maybe not even founders, but ambitious, smart women who push me and I push them, and I can have challenging dialogues with, and we can kind of think through different things.
Who's the most honest with you?
About life, or just
life, business, everything. Who's the person that is not afraid to give it to you straight? Would it be your husband?
No, he's probably afraid to give it to me straight. Only because he has to deal with the aftermath.
Right.
So that's a great question. I would say it's probably my best friend, who's a woman named Nicole, or Nikki, and she really is
she won't lie to you. She won't lie to you.
No,
That's good.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
We don't need that person. Okay.
Yeah.
How are you able to turn off at 5 o'clock, or is there a point where you turn off?
I'm not great at turning off. So I try to have blocks of time for myself where I'm off. Like, the weekends are really sacred to me, so I try and not work on weekends, but during the week, it's really hard for me to turn my brain off. I can only really do it when I'm 100% occupied on something else. So like last night, I discovered that we have a 2-person board game in our house, and it was the greatest moment of the pandemic for me, because that, like, playing a board game, as cheesy as it sounds, is a way that I can turn off, because I'm just like completely focused on what that is.
I bet you're really competitive.
Very competitive, yeah.
Okay. We only have about 5 minutes left. This might take a bit, but how long did it take for you to launch Knix between the time it was an idea and then it was available to buy?
That was about truly when I started working on it, because I had the idea for a while before I started working on it, but putting in the work, it was about an 18-month process. So I did, let's call it 6 months of like research and development, thinking about the idea. I was in business school at the time, so I sort of had more time. I'm sure I could have done it in a more condensed manner. And then it took me about another 9 months or so to get the product ready to a place where we would be ready to ship. Mhm.
Where did the name Knix come from?
It came from my husband, who's a copywriter, and it's the idea of high-tech knickers and also the idea of nixing things. So nixing worries, insecurities, doubt, pads, tampons, leaks, all the nixes. So that's where it came from.
That's a fantastic. Do you look at your son's diapers and think there's a better way?
100%.
I knew it.
I
I
do.
knew it.
I do.
Really.
I do. We might be prototyping training pants right now. It's well, this actually came out of COVID, because when we weren't sure what the future was going to look like, we're like, what items can we make that people really, really need? Discretionary spending goes down significantly. And I was like, well, we should prototype some more products within the leak proof space because people will need them.
I had a gut feeling and I went with it and I had to ask you. Here is another. Oh, what would you say to yourself 8 years ago based on what you have learned today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it took me so long to believe in myself and to believe that I was capable of things. Like, I think I've talked a lot about feeling nervous about launching things or having this sort of underlying fear that it wasn't going to work. And I talk about being fearless now, but I was not fearless in the beginning. I was very, very, very afraid. And so the one thing that I would give, if I had to look back, I would just really try and encourage me to believe in myself more and to recognize that like no one else has all the answers. Like, it's so easy to look at the room around you and think that everyone else would know how to handle a situation. And the truth is that nobody has the answers. And so that would be my main look back.
I think that's a powerful message because I think a lot of people feel that way no matter what industry they're in. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one last question. Knixteen and Jazz Janning had a partnership. That's amazing. Can you explain and discuss this further?
Yeah, so we I guess 2 years ago, we set out to make bras within our Knixteen collection, but we were designing a whole bunch of different bras, and every time that the designs would be put in front of me, I wouldn't know what to say because I'm not 12 years old or 14 years old, and I wasn't the target market. So what we decided to do was to work with 5 different incredible teens who were leading like role models within their community. And Jazz was one of the incredible young women that we chose to work with. I believe it was the first time that a lingerie company has had a collaboration with a trans woman to kind of create a collection. And she designed an incredible bra that we never would have been able to make on our own, and was just a really awesome human to get to work with.
Would you do a collaboration like that again?
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah.
Well, it has just been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thanks, you too.
Boy, we're proud of you. I know that may sound a little cheesy, but just as a woman, as a Canadian, you're doing so much and making such a huge contribution. So continued success, and we look forward to the next chapter. And I know we're going to talk to you again.
Well, thanks so much for making the time and the continued support. I would not be anywhere without the support of people like you and the Women of Influence community and all of our customers. So it really means a lot.
Well, we learn a lot from you. So that brings us to the hour, and I want to thank the presenting sponsor, BDC, the only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs, and Cisco Designed, helping small business and female entrepreneurs survive and recover through secure remote technology. We encourage everyone to access the resources posted in the chat box. Thank you again, everybody, for being with us today. We have a new way of gathering and meeting with women of influence, and I invite you to join us for the next installment of our 5-part series on Wednesday, May 27th, with Lynn Trong from the Soap Dispensary in Vancouver. So until then, everyone, be safe, take care, and we'll see you again. Bye, Joanna.
Bye, thanks so much.
Thank you.